There is one thing that I learned back in third grade that I use to beat sports betting markets today, and I'm going to tell you exactly what that is. But first, hi, I'm Jack from Unabated.com, and I make sports betting educational content both here on YouTube as well as at Unabated. The goal is to help you understand this exciting world of sports betting and to help you help yourself. Whether you are a professional sports bettor or you are just aspiring to be one, your method of finding angles is a never-ending pursuit. Oddly, the best advice I ever picked up on finding angles came from renowned video poker expert Bob Dancer. In his book Million Dollar Video Poker, Bob talks about a former partner who would just walk around casinos endlessly looking for new angles. It is the needle in the haystack type of method that seems too tedious to most bettors. However, it's also a trait that many successful professional sports bettors have. I'm a big fan of the scientific method. It is a concept you were probably taught in grade school, but you've rarely thought about since. Perhaps this illustration will jog your memory. That chart takes me back to third grade, where a similar diagram was crudely constructed with construction paper and stencils on a bulletin board in our classroom. The first step in the scientific method is to observe. As an aspirational sharp bettor, the best thing you can do to kickstart your career is to constantly be observing. Have you ever looked at every bet available at the sportsbook? Every single bet. Dig down into each sport and into each game. Some of these books have hundreds of available bets on each game. Now that is a lot of surface area for a sportsbook to defend. It is in these nooks and crannies that you can sometimes find something they don't realize is beatable. Sometimes it's a mispriced line, and yes, that's always nice to find. However, more valuable is when they have a systematic misunderstanding of what they're offering and how it should be priced. Usually this occurs when a sportsbook is the only one to offer a certain wager. There is not a market price to help guardrail their pricing. Those are the situations that can be extremely lucrative. I'm often reluctant to go into specifics about various angles. The world of advantage play is pretty cyclical, and while it's rare for a casino or sportsbook to make the same mistake twice, it is commonplace for other casinos and sportsbooks to fail to learn from another's error. Often I can reuse an angle at a different operator later, so best not to tip my hand. However, I'll make an exception here because it is a good example of what it takes to exploit a mistake. At the beginning of this NFL season, I was poking around FanDuel. I decided to see if they had any changes to their teaser pricing, and they made that easy to spot with this new flag on their teasers button. Now, their teaser pricing wasn't great. They used to offer a 2-team 6-point teaser for -120, which was average, and a 3-team +160, which was decent. However, I noticed I could adjust the number of points in the teaser up or down. Up to +14 points and down to, what's this? -6 points? FanDuel was trying out the old reverse teaser, or pleaser as it's sometimes known. The reverse teaser is almost always a sucker bet. Instead of getting 6 points on each leg of your parlay, you give up 6 points on each leg. In exchange for that, you get some long odds. I first became familiar with the reverse teaser in Delaware when they had their NFL parlay cards. Fortunately, it didn't take long to realize that they were a bad bet in Delaware. You're just giving up too much value in exchange for the odds they offered. I decided to compare the odds, though. I still had some old reverse teaser cards from Delaware, and it appeared they pay +2,000 or 20-1 on a 3-team reverse teaser in Delaware. But now here on FanDuel, they paid +2,800 or 28-1. That seems like a pretty big discrepancy. This is going to be worth a closer look. As a professional sports bettor, my method for analyzing any wager is to first figure out what I was up against. I needed to know what the break-even point was on the FanDuel wager. Now, I outline this technique in an article I wrote on Unabated.com about building profitable teaser bets. I'll link that article below. Now, since this was a 3-team wager, and it paid 28 to 1, we take the cube root of the implied probability of the payout. You convert the odds to implied probability, and then, well, here's what the Excel formula would look like. So now what this is saying is we would need a 32.55% implied probability, or plus 207 odds or better on each leg to make these bets a positive expected value. Now this compared well versus what I was up against in Delaware back in the day. That was 36.24% as a break-even point. However, I still wasn't optimistic. It's tough to subtract 6 points from either side of any NFL line and not pass through at least one key number. We would definitely want to avoid situations where we'd be giving up too much value. Instead of just focusing on 3-team wagers, I also ran the numbers on the 2-team wagers. They had a 6-point wager which paid 9 to 1, a 6.5-point wager which paid 10 to 1, and a 7-point wager which paid 11 to 1. And here's how those numbers looked. Suddenly, it's starting to become a little bit more interesting. These odds felt beatable to me. The same factors that make a teaser bet profitable would make a reverse teaser bet unprofitable. Likewise, the same things that make teaser bets bad would make reverse teaser bets good. And in that Building Profitable Teaser Bets article that I referenced, I outlined some teaser traps to avoid. These include teasing through the zero, teasing totals, and teasing other sports. All of the things that would make a regular teaser a bad bet are the things I would be looking to do in a reverse teaser. So I started poking around. Now what's this? I could play these reverse teasers on college football? Well, now things are really looking good. But I kept poking. And that's when I discovered I could play these reverse teasers on totals. Mind officially blown. There's got to be an edge here. Now I just need to quantify my edge. Using the alt line calculator at Unabated, I was quickly able to get an accurate price on every game on the board with regards to subtracting 6, 6.5, or 7 points. I found that totals were by far preferable. How good was it? Well, consider these two Week 1 NFL matchups. Pittsburgh-Buffalo over under 48.5 points, and Cleveland-Kansas City over under 54.5 points. Now, when I enter the Pittsburgh-Buffalo game in the alt line calculator and look for a total 7 points worse than the market line, it tells me that the correct price would be plus 234. Now remember, I already figured out that anything with odds shorter than plus 247 was going to be good. Now, entering the Cleveland-Kansas City game in was even better. Over 61.5, which is 7 points from the posted 54.5 total, well, that was plus 204. To find out what that 2-team teaser's true price would be, we convert the implied probability and then multiply them together and then convert it back. So plus 234 is equal to 29.94%, and plus 204 is equal to 32.89%. By the way, if you aren't sure how to convert from odds to implied probability, I have a video on that from last year that I'll link above, but you can use various tools around the web to get this done for you as well. Now, let's multiply those two numbers together, and we get 9.85%. So we're getting paid 11 to 1 on a wager that will win about 9.85% of the time. That's a very healthy 18.17% edge in our favor. This is going to be fun. I repeated the same exercise for every other game on the schedule, and then took the top 10 best candidates ranked by EV, or expected value, and I set out to round robin all of them together. I would be betting each 2-team permutation of these 10 teams. Well, that created 45 wagers. Now, the nice thing about round robining would be that while my expectation was to win only about 10% of the time on each bet, by making more bets, I was more likely to come close to that expectation. I even got a bit frisky and I tossed in this gem. Now, this bet would have returned $999,060 on a $9.99 wager had it won. And in case you're wondering, my odds of winning were 0.002%, or 50,000 to 1. However, that bet paid 100,000 to 1, which makes it decidedly plus EV. Now, I'm not going to lie. I had dreams of Darren Rovell tweeting about how a bettor turned $10 into $1 million, and he'd track me down and interview me, and I could turn the whole thing into a commercial for Unabated. Sort of like what some of you will probably think this video is doing, but stick with me, there's still a lesson to be learned here. Well, as you can see, the results in week 1 were abysmal to say the least. Just 2 of the teams won, so out of those 45 two-team permutations, my lone winning wager paid 11 to 1. But the week was obviously a pretty big loss. However, I was actually ecstatic about this. Not as happy as had I won, but if FanDuel cleaned up on these bets in week 1, they're likely to get a false sense of security in how they perform going forward. I'm not sure how they didn't catch their own math mistake here, but at this point I was focused on getting down as much as possible as long as I could. Undeterred by the previous results and bolstered by the edge that the alt-line calculator said I had, I pressed on in week 2. Now the week 2 card was even better than week 1 in terms of value, as there were 12 candidates that were just too good to ignore. That created 66 permutations. 5 of the 12 games won. Well, that meant that 10 out of the 66 wagers won. This made up for week 1 losses, and the project was officially in the black. However, the walls were beginning to close in. FanDuel started to institute aggregate limits on teams, so your total exposure on a single team couldn't surpass a certain figure. This would hamper round-robining in weeks with more candidates, and also made me suspicious that they would look deeper into the betting. Now, week 3 had 11 candidates, and 4 of them won. That meant a profitable 6 out of 55 permutation wagers. I actually had to pass on a couple permutations because the aggregate limit, but fortunately for me, they were all losing combinations. So my profit on week 3 was actually a little stronger than expected. I started to think of ways that I could try to get around the aggregate limit. However, I'd soon find out that those efforts weren't going to matter. When I began checking for bets in week 4, I quickly realized that FanDuel had finally spotted the error of their ways. They drastically changed the pricing for their reverse teasers, and the new pricing for two-team wagers were not good. This change was enough to eliminate almost all candidates from contention. They also modified the payout on college football even more drastically. It went from a 15 to 20% edge on most combinations to a minus 5% or lower expectation. Now, of course, just with regular teasers, there are still a couple scenarios where even with these reduced odds, you'd have a small edge. And hey, if you want a data mine for profitable scenarios, be my guest. But just be aware that you won't be making as many wagers, and so you have to be prepared for the variance. In the end, the entire profit-making process was largely all thanks to that scientific method that I learned in grade school. You see, I observed what was available on the sportsbook site. This led to questioning whether this could be a positive EV situation based on what I had seen years before on those parlay cards in Delaware. I researched what the profitable break-even point would be for the wager, and then I hypothesized that what made standard teasers bad could make reverse teasers good. Experimentation with the unabated alt-line calculator pointed me to value in the market. I concluded that FanDuel was offering a great wager, and now I'm reporting it to you. Taking a few minutes to look into every bet available at your sportsbook can be a very profitable experience. A good professional sports bettor uses this method to look at every scenario and tries to envision a way that this could be a profitable situation for them. Then they go about trying to find when those profitable situations might arise. If I had one regret from the above example, it would be that I didn't maximize my profitability. I could have pushed it harder. I could have applied more art to the situation instead of just the science. But that post-mortem thinking is actually improving my approach the next time a similar situation might present itself. You see, it's all part of that final step of the scientific method, the reporting. Perhaps you spotted ways you could have improved on my process as well. And if you have, well then, congratulations. You are on your way to using the scientific method to improve your betting. Well, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up. That lets YouTube know that this is the type of content you like to see. And subscribe, because that lets me know that people would like to see more from me. There's plenty more to find over at unabated.com, and until next time, go out there and win some wagers.